Not realize, when I think about who her supervisors were at the time, I had been told Jennifer Godfrey was Michelle Erickson's direct supervisor. I had the next person up from Jennifer Godfrey is Russ Haugen, and he's the director of the entire Wenatchee CPS. So if Michelle was claiming that there were people that were worse than she was, then she would have been referring to Jennifer Godfrey, Russ Haugen, and then nobody ever mentioned this person's name the entire time this case was pending, but I found out later that he was connected to everything having to do with my son as well. But for whatever reason, they didn't want to bring his name up. Probably he knew that he shouldn't have his name mentioned until the very end, when he made a point of harassing me and mocking me when I was being served a notice of discontinuation of visits with my son. And that man was Tony Block. He was this Italian-American man who was also working on this case regarding my son the entire time. And I believe that it's a little unusual because there is a reason why I was not given his name. And I believe that Tony Block is very, he knew what he was doing. He showed up at the very first hearing. He looked at me with hatred. I wondered who the man was that hated me so much. I later found out his name was Tony Block. I didn't know that he was working on my case, though. I just thought that he was there as an interested person at the time. And then at the very end, when I was being told I couldn't see my son anymore, he was the one who wanted to be the closer on that. And as I say, I was raped by an Italian-American in Wenatchee with police standing by, and I'm quite certain that Tony Block is friends with him. And as I say, I was also banned from a hotel that in Wenatchee called the Coast Hotel, that was owned by an Italian-American who lives in Seattle, Washington. And I'm quite sure that Tony knows who that individual is as well. So I was basically forced to go. If I'm going to Vancouver, anyone would have known that I would have to travel somehow get from Wenatchee across the mountain pass, probably into Seattle, and then travel from there. And I believe someone gave me just a little bit of money, like enough for a Greyhound bus pass if I got into Seattle, but I didn't have any money for even getting to Seattle. And there wasn't a bus. Basically, it was something like, once I got into Seattle, there were some buses that were leaving for Vancouver, but there are no buses, or there was no bus that I could get at that late of a date, the late of notice that CPS gave me, that they didn't have their travel arrangements made up. There wasn't a bus that I could schedule to even be on. Like, there was no bus available. So I was, that's what I was faced with, is being told, when they knew that there was no bus available, I was having to figure out, how do I get to Seattle? And then once I'm in Seattle, somebody had given me a little money, so I thought, okay, I can get a Greyhound ticket from there to Vancouver. But what was I going to do the rest of the time? The rest of the way there, and then trying to get back. So basically, I had to hitchhike. And there was sort of a weird situation with this family that I was had been staying with for a very short time in Wenatchee. And he's connected to the United States military. And told me that he would give me a ride as far as, I think it was Seattle, and then I could go from there. And I remember that he had given me a ride a different time, one other time, to pick up some of my things, or to drop something off, I think, at Shannon Borg's house. And the two of them seemed to indicate that they had had conversations in the past, or that they possibly knew who each other was. I don't know if that's because police knew him and they let her know ahead of time that he was going to be on his way, because she was connected to employees who work for the government. I'm not sure how she already sort of knew about him, but they indicated by how they acted around each other that they did know about each other already. And since I'd already just had all these problems with being forced out of my job, and collusion between the local police and the Seattle FBI and possibly CIA, with obstructing me from being able to work at this one position in Seattle, it's really not impossible that this other man knew a law enforcement person and who knew her. And it's a very small, extremely closely knit area. It's very hard to describe what Wenatchee is like. And so I remember that I had a really kind of a weird feeling the one time that he went with me to do something where he met her and then took me back. But then he said he would give me a ride to Seattle, and I can't remember what he did, but he started doing something that scared me. He started saying something that was really creepy, and I actually can't even remember what it was. I wasn't paranoid. He was literally making some references, or maybe it was that he was driving really erratically and crazy. It was something that I would really have to think about, because I can't even remember right now at this moment. But I asked him to stop the car, and I got out. And I would not have ever done that when I already had this trip arranged, to try to go to Seattle, if he had not been going out of his way to do something that was really frightening. I mean, really frightening. I don't think I've ever gotten out of somebody's car just in the middle of wherever we were and just said, okay, let me out now. I mean, I don't think even some strangers have done anything that was scary. There was one truck driver one time when I was trying to get to the East Coast. That scared me, and so I didn't say I was getting out. At the next stop, I said I needed to use the restroom, and at the next stop, at the restroom, I just got my things and left. But because of the way he was acting, it was scary enough to where I did feel that I needed to get out. And I did, and then he left, and he just had a crazed look in his eyes. It was just really weird, because he's sort of a very normal-looking person. He looked like he was trying to help. He even made a statement for me, along with a bunch of other neighbors, saying that my car was being targeted, but no other cars were being targeted in the area, and that I was a very good mother, that I took my child out all the time. I had collected about 30 witness statements from people who knew how I was with my child, and that I was not mentally ill or delusional or a bad parent or negligent in any way. And so I had all these witness statements, and he was someone who also was willing to do that, but that was also when I was with Alvaro, so I don't know if, at the time, being connected to him in some way, or having a fiance was an incentive for some people to do that, to agree to do that. I don't know. But I didn't have anyone lie. They said exactly what they really thought, and then I had it transcribed. And I had all these statements. I had 30 statements from people in the community that refuted everything horrible that CPS was saying, and it was very powerful. I mean, it was a very powerful testimony. And that information was never entered into the public record. It was supposed to have been entered and filed, and because I was being refused an attorney and then had a problem with a couple of them that, had conflicts of interest, that information was never put into the court record. So I remember that it was also at his house that one of my laptops, the laptop that I'd been given when I was on the East Coast, along with the bag from the guy who did contract work with the CIA, that was being stored at that house, and it disappeared from his house, and then he said he didn't know what happened to it. And I'm very sure that he does know what happened to it. I think that it either went back to Shannon Borg, to the Borgs, who were CIA, and they gave it to somebody, or he gave it to the local police, who then gave it to somebody who passed it on. Most likely to either FBI or CIA. And so I got out, and then I was in there was somebody parked there. It was a truck driver. I asked him if I could get a ride into Seattle because he looked like he was going that direction. He said yes. So then I was in the truck, and then he got really nervous. I told him what my name was, and he acted like he had just seen a ghost. I don't know why he freaked out. He looked like he was Irish American. And all I know is he acted like he was carrying an explosive in his truck. I mean, he acted like I was literally an explosive. He got so nervous after I said my name is Cameo Garrett. I mean, I don't know if I was in the truck of of the enemy or something. Or I really have no idea why he had the reaction he did. It was possibly that he was concerned for his own life, because if he did hear or know anything about me, I had just had several assassination attempts, and one of them involved the bus, the huge boulder in the middle of the road that basically dented the entire front end of this Greyhound bus. I mean, it wasn't like a small dent. It totaled the bus. I was told that the bus was totaled. It was not operable. It was a huge, and a Greyhound bus is large. Large just vehicle. I think that, and so basically like that had happened, and then I had had death threats. I had been told that there were about 10 judges that wanted to kill me. I mean, not just do harm to me, but would like to have me gone. So then I'm in the truck with this guy, so it's possible that he just knew about some of those things, and he was worried for his own life to have me in the van. And I also remember that before I was being driven to Seattle with the one guy in Wenatchee, a whole bunch of Mexican guys drove by, kind of saluting. It was like this processional almost. I almost felt like it was a weird processional of like, goodbye, because this is the end of you. I think that they knew something was going to happen. And I don't think that a bunch of Hispanic people in Wenatchee would know something was going to happen unless they knew that there were powerful people colluding against me to harm me, and who had premeditated harming me in Seattle. and Vancouver area.